Hey there everybody, it's that Slasher Elijah, and I hope you all are doing well. Today is August 6th, day 1 of the PTB for Dead by Daylight Castlevania, and wow, do we have a lot to unpack. I just want to apologize first and foremost. I am currently sick, so if I sound a little off during this video, just please bear with me. Originally, this video was an unscripted mess of me rambling on, gushing about how being able to play as the one and only Prince of Darkness, and to a certain extent, a lot of what I have to say in terms of everything today is relatively the same as it was whenever I just rambled on. Previously, the only Castlevania media I was ever exposed to was what I could only assume to be the original game with my dad several years ago when I was a child. Although, now that I think about it, that could have very well been Super Ghosts and Ghouls, which, goddamn, for any classic Nintendo fans out there, I not only applaud you if you know what that is, but also if you have managed to beat it. It is a difficult bitch of a game. Getting back on track here, I had never in recent times played a Castlevania game. Until now! I was lucky enough to own a Raspberry Pi emulator, which contained thousands of classic old video games, including all 3 of the Castlevania games on the classic Nintendo Entertainment System. And, dear God. Look, I won't directly disclose that I may or may not have stayed up until 3 in the morning, just trying to get past the goddamn motherfucking Medusa hits of only the 2nd fucking level! But what I will tell you is that I went back to bed last night at an incredibly late hour, disgruntled and beaten down. Don't get me wrong, the games are a hell of a lot of fun. They absolutely gave me more appreciation for this franchise joining our Smash Bros of horror. But goddamn, is this just a genuine skill issue on my part? I don't understand. Now, I've moped around, cried, bitched, and moaned for far too long now. So, let's get into some PTB stuff. Let's talk about our survivor, Belmont. Trevor motherfucking Belmont, dude. I know that in terms of hype around this chapter, that Trevor seemed to be far from anyone's first choice. However, he was definitely mine. Trevor is the only family member of the Belmont clan that I feel like I've had the most exposure to, even if it is from the Netflix series. He's a skilled vampire hunter. No, he's a skilled monster hunter. It's not just vampires. He kind of kicks ass. Throughout the entirety of me watching the Netflix series, I felt myself rooting for him every step of the way. His translation into Dead by Daylight only furthered that. It might not be the Trevor that I know, but we still have this character that I genuinely enjoy seeing. Visually, his model is nothing short of stunning. Apparently, his look in Dead by Daylight is from his appearance in Castlevania Curse of Darkness, which is yet another title that I have yet to hear about until now. I'm a fake fan, I know, and I do apologize. The two, they look nearly identical, with the exception of Trevor being broader in Curse of Darkness. I've actually heard a lot of complaints in regards to this change, but honestly, I still think that he looks dope as fuck, and quite frankly, would much rather have what we have now in Dead by Daylight than be running around with a hunk of a man shaped oddly like one of the robots from Futurama. Apologies if I upset anyone with that last remark. Trevor looks dope. Playing as him and hearing his little voice lines here and there feels awesome. Literally, my only complaint about him is while I'm playing as Trevor Belmont, I don't feel like Trevor Belmont. The dude fights monsters. In the Netflix series, he fucking killed death, for God's sake. Literally the Grim Reaper. And you're telling me that this dude can get his ass handed to him by a bunch of teenagers wielding knives. Doesn't feel very Belmont-y to me. Let's talk about his perks. Exaltation is first up, with every stun to the killer upgrading the rarity of whatever item that you are holding, and netting you back 25% of the maximum item charges. Around the release of Vecna to Dead by Daylight, I was kind of faced with a question. And I can't recall if I had seen it within a YouTube video or if I heard this question amongst my friends. But I had heard it, and that question was, how many more perk ideas can Dead by Daylight come up with? Behavior replied to that with a resounding yes. This is just a fun perk. There's not really a whole lot else to it. If I'm low on purple flashlights, I can instead start bringing in green flashlights on top of this perk and still get value. Overall, I'm really happy with the design. It's a unique idea, and while it may not be the most practical, it's just fun. Next up, we have Eyes of Belmont. This is how many others and myself will put it, the lethal pursuer of survivor perks. It gives you a couple of additional seconds on top of whatever aura read you would already have. It's simple. It really is just a reused design, but even then, it's still very strong. Moment of Glory is where I'm a little on the fence. You know Steve Harrington's Second Wind perk, where you have to heal someone up completely, and after some time off of your first hook, you can automatically heal? This is very similar. However, all you have to do instead is search 2 chests, and last for 80 seconds in chase. The execution is easy within reason, but I'm not really sure if it's all that worth it. If you're confident in your chase abilities and the killer absolutely wants your ass, then I can see some practical use. But for you to be able to use this perk, you have to go out of your way and take time to find chests and search through 2 of said chests. That time would more than likely be better spent actually on generators. I don't see this being incredibly strong, but hey, I could be completely wrong. I think my biggest gripe about this perk is that it genuinely has the potential to be really good, but it's also very RNG reliant with chest spawns and how much time it takes to get to those said chests. Overall, I'd say it's pretty alright. Something I was talking about to one of my friends about in terms of Castlevania is how much I love Dracula's depiction in it. He's not just some guy going around saying, "I want to suck your blood, blah blah blah." He's a broken man, driven only by revenge for the death of his wife, Lisa Tepes. Don't get me wrong, he's incredibly evil. If I'm not mistaken, the game version of Dracula quite literally becomes the overall ruler of hell itself. But for some reason, you just can't help but sympathize with him. This is the version of Dracula that we're shown in Dead by Daylight. Jesus Christ. Look, I know I said Trevor was stunning, but Dracula makes Trevor look like a blobfish. Visually, once again, developers have knocked it out of the park. His voice lines are spectacular, some of them deriving directly from the games. One such example being, "What is a man but a miserable little pile of secrets?" Let's get into his perks. Starting with Dominance, every single time that a totem and or chest is touched for the first time, the totem or chest will be blocked off for a couple of seconds by the entity. On its own, it's not great, but I mean there's probably no instance where any sane person would want to run this on its own. This could actually pair up nicely with some already existing hex perks, acting similarly to Old Thrill of the Hunt, where if you pay attention to your totems, you can basically use the entity blocking as a notification, and go over to defend it. I can see this potentially becoming incredibly strong, but that also is reliant on it being paired up with strong hex perks like Devour Hope or maybe Blood Favor. Next up is Hex, Wretched Fate. The best way that I can describe this perk is that it's a pig trap now available on every killer. After a generator is completed, the obsession now suffers from a 33% repair penalty, meaning they'll be working on generators at a snail's pace. This would actively incentivize them to go get rid of the corresponding totem. It's not a terrible perk, it does actively take someone out of the trial in a way, as opposed to having to worry about 4 survivors, you can instead just worry about 3. Definitely a lot more manageable. I do feel like it is going to be slept on a whole lot more just because it's labeled as a hex perk. I would actually really encourage people to try and use this perk, try to pair it up with something like Deadlock and save the best for last, and during the point that your totem is up, just completely ignore the obsession, even if they're on gens. More than likely, they'll be trying to track down their hex totem. Meanwhile, you chase the other 3 survivors, build up stacks on Save the Best. Last but not least is Human Greed. Well, actually, this might be the least useful out of all of the perks I've previously discussed. You now have the ability to shut open chests, and shut chests now have a radius around them where you can see auras. This is kinda useless though, I'm not gonna lie. Like, maybe for initial information, it's okay, but there's just so many better options out there. Lethal Pursuer allows you to see auras at the very beginning of the trial, along with stacking additional aura read onto other aura perks. Hell, Vecna, the last killer that came out, came with Weave Attunement, which quite literally turns items into CCTV security cameras as long as they're on the ground. If they made it so it was permanent aura read as opposed to being on a time limit around chests, then cool, alright, I can dig it. But it is on a time limit. Probably one of the worst perks out of all of the others listed. Alright. I wanted to save this part for last. We're gonna transition into Dracula's power. I've played a lot of this PTB. Usually after the first day, I'd switch back to live, but I've been playing this PTB every day since it's been out. In terms of Dracula's power, I'm unsure on how to feel about it. There are really good parts here, but it feels uninspired. On the other hand, there are separate parts that genuinely turn normal matches on its head. Let's go ahead and just break it down piece by piece. Dracula has access to 3 forms that he can change between at will: his vampire form, wolf form, and bat form. Vampire form is just your basic killer form. While in this form, you also have access to casting a Hellfire spell, which is incredibly similar to Pyramid Head's Punishment of the Damned, or Nemesis's Tactical Whip. The wolf form switches you into third person. Chasing survivors will now intermediately spawn scent orbs, which when collected grant you a minor speed boost. You can also charge a pounce that is very, very similar to a smaller Wesker Dash or a Demogorgon Shred. In the event that you miss your initial pounce, you automatically do it a second time. I also want to let it be known that the wolf form states that you're automatically supposed to be moving at a faster pace. I don't know if the wolf form is just bugged, or maybe it's an error in the writing. However, I only moved faster after I collected scent orbs. And then you have the bat form. Alternatively to the wolf form, it's incredibly noticeable that you are in fact moving at a faster pace. During this form, you are also granted undetectable, and the only negative trade-off for this is that you can no longer see survivors. You can, however, see scratch marks and hear survivor audio. You can also teleport to any vault location before suffering from a cooldown. Switching in between these forms is alright. Something I really do dislike about Dracula is that doing anything and everything with him has some form of movement speed slowdown, no matter how minor the action. Press E to give you the prompts to shapeshift, slowdown. Actually change forms, slowdown. Charge Hellfire. Not only do you get slowdown during the initial charging process, you have a slowdown while holding the power and while casting it. Alright, look, I can understand the slowdown for Hellfire. If you were at the same movement speed holding the power, it just would be busted as all shit. But the slowdown on top of everything else kinda seems like overkill to me. But let's talk about some positives. I really enjoy the bat form. It pairs up really nicely with discoordinates, I found. As long as you're on top of your surviving tracking, it can be a really good way of catching up as well. Even besides the initial movement speed boost, the teleport can also be a really great way of getting to point A to point B very, very quickly. Hellfire is a really great anti-loop tool. I think my biggest gripe is just the slowdown on top of a cooldown, making every miss with it feel more and more punishing. Overall, Dracula feels alright. I love his aesthetic. I mean, come the fuck on, he's the Prince of Darkness. He's fucking Dracula. But parts of his power seem to fall flat for me. I'm really eager in what changes they plan on implementing to him during live, and hopefully seeing what buffs they give him as well. Despite whatever happens, I'm going to try my best to learn him and main him alongside the unknown. With all of that being said, thank you all so much for watching today's video. Your viewership and continued support really does mean a lot to me. if you'd like to interact with me directly, feel free to join my public Discord server. There will be a link provided in the description down below. With all of that being said, be like the unknown. Do not deny yourself your happiness. After all, life is what you make it. And keep your eye out for Dead by Daylight Castlevania coming out August 27th. And, of course, have a terrific day.